I want to thank everybody for their patience while you waited for me to come up with another video. I had set up a few weeks back some leftover footage that was shot on my sister's iPhone of an interview that I did for the local Fox News affiliate in Miami with my dad. And that was a really special moment. I hope you were able to enjoy finally seeing video action of him in the flesh. So today's video is a little bit of a pivot. I've obviously told you a lot about my own story, and this is still very much about my story, but it was a little bit more an acknowledgement of how weird it is to be grateful for the fact that you exist as the product of a sperm donation, and also very aware of the ethical dynamics that come into to your own birth. And if that doesn't make sense right now, perhaps it does to some of you. I'm going to dive into that now. Before I do, I want to thank those of you who've subscribed. I hadn't deserved it by not putting out much in the past month, but I see that we're up to 108 subscribers, and a lot of you have left really nice comments and questions, which I will get to, and I appreciate you taking the time to do so and joining me on this journey, because I understand in a lot of ways it's yours too. This video is the ethical conundrum of donor world, and I should clarify I wrote it in February, so there's some context in there that will be less relevant today, but relevant to then. This is weird. Being donor conceived, having 5 and counting half siblings, knowing with a high degree of certainty that within 6 to 8 weeks of holiday gifting, you'll probably find 1 or 2 more. Looking in the mirror and not knowing who gave you blue eyes. That is all weird. And yet, it's all at the surface. I was given the gift of life. I have others connected to me biologically, and unimpressively, I obtained an eye color I did nothing to achieve. Semantics. Life doesn't trade in semantics, though, at least not in substantive corners. That's where questions and drawn-out pauses are found, where I've navigated most of the past 28 months. Wow, you've got 5 half-siblings you didn't know until your 30s? I can retell that, I have retold that, the way a circus clown dances and poses for an audience on a near-daily basis. But no one wants to go into the corners with you. They want the piece of the story that's easiest to digest, the most awe-inspiring to retell. It's a human truth, one I'm as guilty of as anybody else, as often as anybody else. No one wants to share or understand the pain of Vanessa Bryant and the death of Kobe and her daughter. They want to stay close enough to smell the smoke, but far enough to avoid the flames. Mercifully, I have a handful of half-siblings, a tribe that trades in the same questions I do, in the same spaces. So we ask scores of questions, but the leading one is undoubtedly, who is our biological father? Not just his name, but who is he? At the surface, I know enough, or a little. He's a doctor. He practiced or practices medicine in Rochester, New York, and he donated sperm at least 9 months prior to the birth of my first and last siblings, so a minimum of 20 months from at least February of 1983 to October of 1984. That's the what. If our parents were given the chance to handpick some perceived better qualities, well, we reaped the benefits. We became the sons and daughters of a young doctor with a clean bill of health. Our inheritance is intellect, and according to the fine folks at Genome Link, higher than average life expectancy, none of which, again, I can take credit for. It's on that point that the things start to spin off the road a bit. On matters of DNA, of how I'm coded, of how I look, I can't cling to the identity of my father, the man who raised me. I and 5 others instead grasp at hollow platitudes of a kind-hearted doctor and an executive summary that was likely printed and thrown into a binder for the consideration of eager would-be moms and dads. Unless he or a close family miraculously shows up as a match for one of us on 23andMe or Ancestry.com, Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, any of those, the odds are against us ever knowing more than that. We exist because of an anonymous blue-eyed doctor who donated sperm for 20 months in Rochester, New York in the early 80s. The ethics of such a scenario have historically been summarized simply. Donors deserve the privilege of anonymity. Struggling with my words today. I'd argue that the only time that's called into question is when you discover that you are the biological child of one of those donors. And then what? In my heart, I know it doesn't matter, at least not to the extent that it changes who I am or who I might become. I've always had this DNA. I've always had this identity. The only thing that changed is my awareness of it. And yet, I want to know his name. I want to see his face. I want to learn about who he is and who he became. I don't have a desire to know him personally. I have one father, and he has always been mine. But I am keenly aware that much of who I am is a product of this other man. So I navigate the world with parts of him, relying on half of the qualities that are coded into my 23 twisting helixes of DNA to guide me. I love my life. I am happy with who I am. And who I am is inextricably a part of him. So what of my rights? Donor children and children of closed adoptions are admittedly afforded few rights. It's a contrast in ethics. He who helps create life has more rights than he who is created. That's not a statement for bombast. It's just the truth. I'm not angered by it, but I am troubled by the principles that belie its foundation. Because anecdotally, I can hear the same refrains. Well, you can't have kids popping out of the woodwork later on in this person's life and disrupt their lives as a result. Sure, it's not ideal. And then neither is walking through life not knowing the full origins of your own identity, or being told that the modus operandi in modern fertility treatments cares about your existence, but only so long as your existence doesn't raise questions of those who had a hand in your creation. 2 weeks ago, or rather this would have been beginning of 2020 in late January, New York became the 10th state to allow children of closed adoption to gain access to their own adoption records, opening the door for exploration of family and health records. But in 40 other states, adopted children don't have that option. If they're stricken with a severe ailment that could be explored through heredity, well, they don't have access to family health records. And donor-conceived children still lack those rights in all 50 states. It says nothing of the other interests or curiosities in knowing more about themselves. I've been welcomed into private Facebook groups for parents and children of donor conception, and I see firsthand the pain endured by those who want to know more about themselves, or who are being outright rejected by biological families once they learned of their existence. They don't have a medical record to cling to. I'm fortunate to have peace within myself, despite my questions. Others don't have that, and for them, having nothing means everything. So that's the end of this week's video. I'm going to try to sneak in a few more since I've left you hanging for a while. I do appreciate your patience, but I assure you I have a lot of content to share with you. Looking forward to doing it again, and please be sure to continue to leave your comments and questions. I will be getting back to them. Thanks.